It's the most magical of all things, a satisfying sequel. Hi everyone, I'm Jacob, I'm the Cowhat Librarian, and I'm here today to talk to you about a recently published sequel that was absolutely fantastic. And it is Eva Evergreen and the Cursed Witch by Julie Abe. Now, I've previously talked about Eva Evergreen's Semi-Magical Witch and how much I enjoyed it and how much it reminded me of Kiki's Delivery Service. And so when the first book ended on an unexpected cliffhanger, I was thrilled. I was delighted to hear that there was going to be a sequel. And I've been waiting for the sequel. I've been checking my library catalog every few weeks to see if a copy is on order so I could place a hold on it to read it. And a day or two before its release date earlier this week, I finally gave up and purchased it on my e-reader instead. And naturally, On Order record showed up in my library's catalog a day or two later. At any rate. So, I'm talking about Eva Evergreen and the Cursed Witch, and it was a masterful sequel. Eva is still a wonderful character, and the story felt like a bit of a roller coaster. It was great. So, as the last book ended, Eva had saved the city of Oteri from the culling, had passed her test to become a novice witch, and found out at the last moment of the story, through a map she and her mother had enchanted, that the culling, this magical storm that had afflicted their area for a number of years, followed a path that led right through the castle of Hyo Grottel, the other Grandmaster Witch in their council. And as the first book ended, the queen of their realm was going to be in a meeting with him. So this book picks up where that one ended off. Eva and her mother, the other Grandmaster Witch in the council, hurry off to the queen's castle and follow a secret passage that Eva's mother knows about due to her long friendship with the queen and her help in transforming the castle into a magnificent crystal palace. And they meet with the queen, and Eva's about to show her the map and explain how Grottel is at the heart of the culling when he appears. But it's not to attack them, it's not to denounce them, it's not to convince the queen of anything directly. It's to call a meeting of the inner council. Some of the top wizards and witches that belong to the council to talk about a grave matter. He accuses Eva's mother of starting the culling while she was doing research to take magic and transfer it to a person. You see, when Eva was little, it took a very, very long time for her magical abilities to manifest. And Grottel implies that her mother caused the culling while trying to transfer magical powers to Eva. The Inner Council buys enough of this explanation to put Eva and her mother on the defensive. And it's only when Eva finally blurts out about the map and Grottel's connection with the culling that he casts a spell to curse her and try to take away her magic. And Eva's mom takes the brunt of the curse. She is stripped of her magical power. She goes from being a Grandmaster Witch to a normal human with no magic in the blink of an eye. Everyone is absolutely horrified that this could happen. Grottel escapes, and in the aftermath of the confusion, the queen sets up two things. One, she insists that the council start looking for Grottel and capturing him and ending the culling, and that Eva herself is not allowed to go after him, and she has to make a promise to that effect. So while the powerful witches and wizards of the council attempt various ways to get to Groddle's castle to find out the truth of the culling and to make it stop. Eva and many of the lower ranked witches and wizards are being tasked by the scryers of the council to go to this village or that area to prepare for the culling, because as things progress, the culling appears more frequently and does more damage, and the various witches and wizards are doing everything they can to try to hold the realm together, while the higher ranking ones mount their ongoing assault of Groddle's castle. During this point, Eva reconnects with a few of her friends from the first book, Charlotte and Davy, the ones who she was trying to help find their parents with the map that led to everything with Groddle. And they help her explore the magical bookstore that kicked off events in the first book. And she finds a few things there that give her some more information, and she's ultimately able to convince the task force going to Groddle's castle that she should be allowed to come along, because she can cast her spell on the map to show the future path of the culling so that they can avoid it when they're trying to get into Groddle's castle. She makes her way in with them into their base and starts having some weird things happen. A ghostly apparition appears and calls to her and talks with her. And eventually she has to join one of the assaults on the castle, but all the other witches and wizards are captured. Eva and her friends are ultimately captured as well, and they're rescued by an unexpected source. Soma, one of the pirates from the first book, who was against Eva and didn't think very highly of her, but was ultimately helpful in protecting Oteri from the culling and was on her side at the end, is one of the mercenaries helping Groddle. He allows Eva and her friends to escape, but warns her that if they're captured again and he's around the other mercenaries, he cannot help them again. And things build and build and build until the climax and the ending. It was fantastic. Eva is still a wonderful, wonderful character in the mold of Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, and she has to grow up some in this book, and it's a treat to see. The side characters are well developed. Eva's mother losing her magic was completely unexpected and added some real depth to the proceedings, because with her mother and Groddle being peers as far as magical power goes, it would have rendered the entire operation to capture him much less interesting. It was an uphill struggle for Eva and the other witches and wizards, and it was amazing. Her friends were back on her side and doing everything they can to help, and they were wonderful, just like they were in the first book. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And I recommend it. If you enjoyed Eva Evergreen's Semi-Magical Witch, go read the sequel. If you haven't read Eva Evergreen's Semi-Magical Witch, but you like magical stories like Kiki's Delivery Service, or perhaps A Snicker of Magic by Natalie Lloyd, or Wizard's Hall by Jane Yolen, give the first book a try. Go borrow it from your local library for the young reader in your life, your child, your student, your library patron, and encourage them to continue on with the sequel. Julie Abe did an incredible job writing this, and the two books together feel very, very much like she wrote a single story that was too long for a single book, split it nice and neatly in two, and it all just worked. I highly recommend it. With that said, there are big spoilers ahead, so be warned, because I'm going to talk about the deal breaker and the ending. I loved this story. I really enjoyed it. But in a few ways, it reminded me a little bit of the Big Bang Theory episode where they talked about how Indiana Jones himself was sort of inconsequential to the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because if he hadn't been there, the Nazis would have opened the Ark and released the spirits, and the Nazis would have been destroyed anyway. And to a small extent, Eva Evergreen and the Cursed Witch feels a little bit the same. Eva is tied to the whole story due to the emotional connection of her mom losing her magic, and that makes a lot of sense. And Eva's involvement makes sense because she originally cast the spell on the map that let her see the culling and its connection to Grottle. After that, though, her involvement seems just a little bit contrived. Eva has this map, but somehow it's the only way that it can get these seasoned witches and wizards close to Grottle safely. I didn't really buy that. And Eva's connection to Micah, the girl apparition she sees, who has a major role in the story at the end, that seemed fairly inconsequential as well. I didn't really appreciate any real connection between them other than that they both liked making potions. I don't understand why Micah didn't appear to any other witch or wizard in that book. Maybe it was the age, that Eva was younger than any of the other witches or wizards in that camp that was making the assault. I don't know. It rang just a little bit false to me that Eva was this big central character in this stuff that didn't really feel like she necessarily needed to be to me. And that was a little bit disappointing. That said, though, the ending was not. It shocked me to learn that the culling came about because Grottle was trying to save his daughter. It blew me away that it implied that he had to pull her magic away from her, the same way had tried to pull it away from Eva prior to her novice test. It provided some really good reasoning for why he doesn't like Eva at all. That she managed to skate by having just enough magic, but his own daughter didn't. And he and his daughter inadvertently creating this culling to pull magic and power from other sources to keep her around, to keep her alive. It was pretty sad. And it fell a little bit in the category of the recent Disney villains are actually okay people and they have reasons for being bad side of things. But it was really well done. His sacrifice to save her in that moment felt very real and not a contrived thing. And the overall ending was wonderful. It felt very real. Grottle sacrifices himself. The culling is gone, but the effects of things didn't just magically become better. Eva's mom has a very slow recovery of her magic. At the end of the book, she still has very limited powers and she's still trying to recover them. Micah is not completely saved by Grottle's sacrifice of himself. She's gradually fading away. Eva's friends, Charlotte and Davy, she was able to save Davy's mom because she was still there in sort of a statue form from the culling pulling most of her spirit from her, but not all of it. But Charlotte's mom didn't make it. All these little things where it wasn't a happily ever after for everything. Things did not wrap up in a very neat and tidy bow. It made it feel very real, and I couldn't have appreciated it more. Julie Abe nailed the ending. It was wonderful. And the way she did it gave me confidence that these characters are going to continue on and they're going to have fun lives together and they're going to do all sorts of neat things together. And they hint that Charlotte may be in for some training to possibly become the Queen's successor someday. And that was a really interesting story nugget I'd like to see explored further. But it also felt like Julie Abe wrapped things up. That this is just the end. She had this story to tell about Eva. She did it over 2 books. And that's it. And that's okay. I'm satisfied with this ending because it was done so well. What else can I say about it? Eva's Firefox was cute and played an important role, and the Broom Ex Machina from the first book didn't appear. There were fun callbacks to some of the people she met in the first book. Her father made a bigger appearance in this one. Importantly, and I didn't get into this previously, Eva's rival from the first book, Grottel's nephew, they butted heads in the first book, and he wasn't very impressed with her and was seen as a surefire success as a wizard while she barely had any magical power. In the course of this book, they end up having to cooperate with each other. And I was worried at first that it was going to be a traditional rivals smushed together story, and they fight and bicker and that's the end of it. And it was really well written. They were rivals. Eva is suspicious of his motives and whether he's actually going to help them or his uncle, and that was well done. And in the end, their gradual growing tolerance and a small amount of respect for each other was really well written as well. And when they end the story sort of declaring themselves to be rivals, that they're going to be racing to see who becomes a grandmaster first, that was great stuff. It felt a lot to me like the relationship between Goku and Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, or similar stories where there are these people who were enemies. There's still friction between them. They certainly don't see everything eye to eye going forward, but instead of butting heads and fighting against each other, they're trying to outrace each other. They're trying to outcompete each other, and they're looking forward to the challenge, and it was delightful. I loved it. If you haven't had a chance yet, go read Eva Evergreen's Semi-Magical Witch and then continue on to the sequel. I don't think you'll be disappointed. With that, thanks for listening to me ramble about this book. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please keep an eye out for the other things I'm talking about from the Cowhat Library. Thanks everyone. Bye now.